startup costs, financing plan. No, I think startup costs, then your operation costs. Because within your startup costs are 3 months of your overhead expense. So once you get to your operating costs, your annualized operating costs, that's a great segue from your startup costs. Because you're going to have to finance the startup, more or less. And then when you finance that, that payment becomes an annual expense. So you already got that in there, and then you can show us how within your startup costs you're accounting for 3 months of overhead to help the business, manage through the first few months of activities. And the financing arrangements are going to be important. Either this is going to be a direct loan for a specific period of time with a specific interest rate. It can't be more than 5 years, and the interest rate should be competitive, which I think is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 7% or so. It could actually be a little bit lower in terms of current market conditions, but consider the fact that you're a very young startup company, the bank's going to put a premium on their costs.
Plus two.
Whatever. And you just have to accept that, or do without. And the other option besides debt financing is equity financing. So if it's equity financing, then what are the terms of that deal? You're going to raise 80% of your costs in exchange for how much equity? You're not going to give up 80% of the company, but you're going to give up something. You're going to give up probably about 40 or 50%. I don't know if you want to give up the majority either. You never want to give up the majority of your company, because then it's not your company anymore. It's somebody else's company, and you're just working for them in effect. So think all of that through when you're coming up with your equity arrangement. Yes, sir.
Shark Tank last night just had that example.
Of giving up the company?
Giving up 51%.
Yeah, you can't do that. The person didn't take the deal?
Is that like a Dragon's Den type of show, or what is that?
No, Shark Tank is one of these reality TV shows.
I watch Dragon's Den. I think it's great. Yeah.
Entrepreneurs are pitching their ideas to a board of millionaires.
That's like Dragon's Den.
Yeah, basically, along the same concept.
But keep in mind, it's Hollywood, though. So you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know anybody that's going to spend a couple $100,000 on a 5-minute pitch.
So
there's probably, these guys probably read a lot of their stuff beforehand. They know what kind of questions they want to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that. So.
Because reality is not really reality.
Reality.
No.
Comment, though?
Yes, Professor. So let's say in our case, we're in based on the contribution, the owners are 33% and the outside investors 66%. Could we say that out of that 66%, we're giving them a 40% equity? Could we say that?
Why would you go outside of the rules? When the rules say 20%. 20% owners
Yes.
equity.
Yes.
80% outside investors. So you want to make it 33, 63, 66?
Because of the 100,000 and 200,000, so 100 over 300,000 is 33%.
Those are suggested limits.
Right.
You don't have to be limited by that.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is, could you, even though the money they put in is more, could you say that you're giving them equity or like a controlling interest that is actually less than what the...
Sure.
You could?
That's a matter for them to
take it or leave it.
And plus 40%. That's like 40% return on their investment. Because at the end of your 5 years, they got a 40% claim on the assets of the company, which are mostly cash. So when you get down to your exit strategy, how do you buy those investors out? Or do they even want to be bought out? See, your exit strategy has really, I think, 3 options. Stay in the business and go completely private by buying your equity investors out. Getting out of the business, which means buying investors out, paying off each other, and that's it. Which involves kind of selling the business, if you will. I don't think you just close down a successful business. But you could. That's an option. You know, you could just say, well, we tried this. It's very profitable in 5 years. Let's cut it off and everybody go their separate ways. That's an exit strategy. I don't know why you would do it like that, but it's still an exit strategy. And the third strategy is, well, let's keep our investors with us. Let's give them a 40% return right off the bat in year 5. And then let's talk about a new arrangement. You know, as we're expanding into some of these other new markets. That's really, I think, the exit strategy that is probably most practical. Because the investors probably don't need the money back, you know, in any real way. They wouldn't have put it up there if they needed it back right away. But you want to show them how you met your commitment to give them 40% off of whatever assets there are in the company. And then, you know, we can strike a new deal. At that point, it's a clean slate as far as they're concerned. But maybe they want to continue to stick with your business as you grow and expand. So it's now a new relationship, whatever you guys want that to be. But the valuation of your business is a little controversial here, because you don't necessarily want to overvalue the business based on some unrealistic measures of future growth. And that's all very hypothetical. Nobody knows how the business is going to perform, even if they performed very well in the past. The future is uncertain. So my suggestion is one of two ways to do this. You can either just take the last cash flow of year 5 and adjust that for the cost of capital. And what is the weighted average cost of capital here? The weighted average cost of capital is generally your expected rate of return. That's basically what your opportunity costs are outside of that particular industry. So to do that, I think that's the value-added approach, to take that cash flow. But it's not just that cash flow. I think the value-added approach takes a stream of future cash flows and discounts those back to a present value using the weighted average cost of capital as an adjustment factor. If you want to do something like that, that's fine with me. I also think if you just sum together 5 years of your cash flow and add in the cost of your startup, that's a minimum value. You know, that's not necessarily, well, that would almost correspond to the book value as well, because your total assets in year 5 on the balance sheet reflects all cash on hand, which is basically the summation of your cash flows, plus the depreciated value of your fixed assets, which should probably be reduced close to near zero, if anything. So most of your assets in year 5 are going to be cash. And, you know, that becomes a minimum basis for valuing your business. Okay? Then we talk, well, also in the financials, we want to see that statement of cash flows, beginning and ending cash values, very important. Sources of cash, uses of cash. Sources oftentimes are what? Operating activities, investing activities, financing activities. Those are all the sources that your money is going to come from. Uses of cash are operating expenses, more or less. That's why startup. You know, startup and operating costs are all deductions. So what remains at the end of year 1 is ending cash balance. Big difference between profit and ending cash. You could be negative profit-wise in year 1. You still got to have positive cash. For at least, 3 months or more of activity. Because if you lost money at the end of the first year, you're going to still lose money at the beginning of the next year. All other things being considered. So you got to be able to show that gradual improvement in your income statement. The income statement is not an accrual type of statement, it's a period statement. It only looks at the results for 1 year. Doesn't carry that forward in any way. Your analysis has to carry losses forward. So whatever you lost in year one, you gotta make that up in year two before you can account for profits. That's where you do it in the cash flow statement, because the ending cash in year one becomes beginning cash in year two, and then you deduct all expenses from that beginning cash, so that at the end of year two, your ending cash balance takes into account any losses from year one, which have already been deducted from cash, plus any profits from year two. So realistically, your cash balance should be growing as your profits start to improve. Your cash balance should always presumably be at least ahead of your profits for the first couple of years. And then at the end, what we want to do is have you go over the highlights again in a type of executive summary. See, the executive summary is actually at the beginning of your written report, but it's at the end of your presentation, because that's when you want to summarize all of the highlights. You want to talk about your ratios there, which come out of your financial plan somewhat. And the key ratios, I think, that we're looking for are simply profitability measures and perhaps liquidity measures. You can have as many ratios as you like, but the only two that really are important for investors are profitability, return on equity, return on assets, or liquidity, meaning your ability to meet debt, which would be your current ratio, total assets over total liabilities, or vice versa, how that goes. So again, this whole thing, we're planning it to take no more than, let's say, 40 minutes. And we're going to give you guys a little bit more time than traditionally the 30 minutes are, so that we can, not rush you through. You guys have a lot to say about these two projects here. Where's Mara at today?
She's taking the daughter.
Oh, that's right. So we can't get 100%, right? But plan on somewhere between no more than 40 minutes, but then there's going to be a 15-minute review for the panel, and then we'll take a short break. So next week we'll be starting up just about the same time, 2 o'clock, using that first hour for everyone to sort of get set up. We'll just kind of have a little discussion, if we will. We might get started really before 2. But we want to be able to give everybody a chance to get here.
How many count?
Say that again?
How many count?
Probably at least 3.
3?
Yeah.
And then are we setting up, like the food and stuff like that prior?
You know what, we'll discuss, in fact, we can discuss that right now, because probably not a good idea to have food in this room, even though this is probably we're a small enough class where we can just set the food right here on these tables. But if it's real nice food, it's very distracting for everyone sitting up here in the front. So maybe we'll set it up in the back or something like that.
Do you want us to set that prior to?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, to set it up prior, because the panel members, that way you can get them sedated and ready to hear your in fact, that gives us time to be a little more social for that first hour. You guys should make sure you're all set up on the podium, that thing is working, so when your time comes, all you got to do is go up there and click the mouse and it's ready to start. But here's what we did before. We just have each group bring in whatever they feel, they want to contribute for the class. You just have to bring in enough for, 15 people or so. We've got probably 15 students, but you got 3 or 4 panel people, and then we might have a couple guests as well. You guys are free to invite outside people if you like. Not your whole family, but if you got a boss, somebody that may be a real person that's interested in your work, please invite them. Because this is a chance for you to show off. This is your highlight here. I'd certainly invite my supervisor, if he's paying for this stuff. You know, he wants to be able to see what his payback is to a certain extent. Plus, this is good PR for you guys. Yeah, I think this could be obviously a nice little stepping stone for you career-wise. Yes, ma'am.
How many copies do we need to bring?
Next week we need 3 copies.
Of the
Three.
presentation?
Well, the presentation can be a separate insert to your written report.
Okay.
That's a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we need that on CD as well. So on the CD is the written report and the presentation.
Yes, sir.
But the hard copy is just the written report primarily. And then if you want to have your slides in outline view, where you get 6 to a page or something like that. I think that keeps your costs down. And it allows, you know, a reader to not only read your written report, but to see your slides as well. Yes, sir.
A couple points. One, most very important, check your CD that you write with your files on 2 or 3 or 4 different computers. Make sure you've got content, number 1, and content is accessible, number 2. I've had in my project management capstones, people turn in CDs,
Nothing wrong.
nothing on them. So, you know, make sure you did
It
your
didn't
job right.
burn.
The other thing that I recommend is, besides having your written document and your PowerPoint, any other material that you develop, like if you use Microsoft Project, you know, put that file there, you know, stuff like that, so that that may be useful to people who might be reviewing the project.
Good point.
A lot of students just minimize. Oh, I only have to put these 2 items because that's what was asked for. Try to do full revelation.
Also, if you want to develop any kind of handout, like a brochure, you guys have little business cards made up, anything that's like a mock-up display, you're free to bring those in. Brochures, any kind of promotional material should also go within there. Also, if you got any of my reports still outstanding, I need those back. You know, those are valuable documents, because now I'll be taking your reports and adding them to the inventory. So next semester I may be using your reports as the first indications of what was done in the previous classes here. But also this, you guys are completing your draft finals this week. I need those in the Dropbox no later than Wednesday of next week. Because I'll have to forward those to the panel members and give them at least a couple days to read it. If you get it to me before Wednesday, maybe we'll even be able to get you some comments back before next Saturday. But that would mean I'd have to have it like Monday or Tuesday at the latest. Yeah, Monday or Tuesday at the latest. If I don't get comments back from the panel, at least I would have a chance to read it and get it back to you. Don't get
Week 8,
week 8.
we come back.
We come back.
That's next week.
No, week 8, week 7 is next week.
Right.
This is
Right.
week 6.
We come back the following Monday.
No, we come back following Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday, not Monday. And I'm trying to verify that we're going to be in this room at
The business
6:30.
not the individual.
Now, let me point out
I'm
this
going to
thing.
integrate
So
that.
the 29th, which is a Wednesday.
Yes, that's the last day of the semester.
Okay.
Let me
What
point
time
out
though?
6:30. And the whole purpose of that meeting is just to basically share with you guys what the panel thought about your presentation.
Okay.
What I thought about them. We don't discuss your grades because the grades are in the grade book, but we give you basically feedback.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And we give you encouragement to look at this as really the first step in a series of steps. This isn't the end process. This might be the end of your academic process, but it's really the first step. And if you don't think being an entrepreneur is challenging, just go ahead and try and do it. But to be honest with you, that's the only real options you have to secure your future. You're not going to secure your future with a job in the United States. You might secure the next couple of years with a job, but But to make enough money in a short period of time to really set it aside so you can live the way you want to, you gotta be your own boss.
Yeah.
You gotta be your own boss.
Especially not in this economy.
No, but see, this is the time to do it, because what do you have to lose, really? You know?
Drop it all as it is.
Yeah, we're
But
not
see,
that
you know
big.
what? And we should take a page out of the book of recent immigrants to the United States, particularly Asians who come here, half the time can't hardly speak English.
Yeah.
Within a year, they're in business, with the whole family being part of the business. Within 4 or 5 years, those kids are gone off to college.
Yeah.
Mom and dad still in the business. 10 years, they've moved out of that little house and now in a nicer big house. Family's still together. The kids come back from college now, MBAs, PhDs. Business is done, morphed in out of a single enterprise to one with maybe 20 different locations. Still can't speak English that good. But they're millionaires. They're very wealthy. Who cares what they can speak? They can hire somebody to interpret for them. So you can't be afraid of the hard work. You know, and in some regards, you know, we have to look at ourselves here in America as being somewhat the victims of our own success. You know, we take things way too casually here. And I think we feel that all we have to do is come up with an idea and it'll sell itself. That's not gonna really cut it too far. You can come up with a great idea, sure, but you know, how many of those ideas really evolve into a new Facebook or something like that? You know, I think immigrants that come here, you know, they see the opportunity that's everywhere. And they don't have to have a great idea. They'll come here and buy an existing business and make that business better, and eventually, you know, that becomes their business. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the key is to reevaluate that idea constantly.
Yeah, you got to stay on top of the changing market and the demographic trends. And, you know, we're not the biggest consuming nation in the world for nothing. You know, we buy some of everything here. So to the extent that everyone's trying to do business in the United States is just a big plus. The other side of the opportunity is, you know, we've got the world now as your market. You know, the world is as for voting a place now with the internet being available to you, as well as the easy travel. You know, you don't have the restrictions in most parts of the world that used to be in places as late as maybe 20 or 30 years ago. All of Asia should be a tremendous new market awareness for all U.S. companies. You know, Asia sells here without no problem. We don't sell there because there's a lot of sort of obstacles for U.S. companies to
Exchange rate.
Not just exchange rate, but official policy.
Culture.
Yeah, well, culture and the cost, the tariff issues. Japan doesn't want to buy American cars. They want to buy Japanese cars. You can buy an American car in Japan, but it costs you 3 times what a Japanese car would cost you. So why buy anything from America? Unless you just wanted it to be a status symbol. And it's not enough for people like that to make it any real go at. So that's where we're at, guys. I don't want to take up too much more time. Let's try and get these things underway. Anyone have any comments or any questions about anything?
Is the voting going to be up there first for usage in next weekend or no?
Yeah,
Sure.
the way it is.
Absolutely.
No, I was just wondering, but I probably don't.
Now, this podium is permanent. This thing doesn't move. So why don't we take about 5 minutes or so, and let's let group 1 get started, and then.
So I understand that they're going first?